Evening, everybody. I will call the Planning Committee meeting to order. This meeting is being held in person and electronically in accordance with the Municipal Act, which does provide for both electronic and in-person participation. There are no consent items, no staff reports or other approval items on tonight's agenda. Purpose of tonight is to hold 3 public meetings under the Planning Act for proposed developments here in the city of Barrie. I'll just remind everybody off the top, if you're joining the meeting virtually, you've not yet registered and you wish to speak tonight, you know you're going to want to speak tonight at one of these 3 meetings, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353 and staff will send you the information required to participate virtually. Tonight's applications were submitted by the developers and deemed complete under the Planning Act to proceed to a public meeting. First public meeting is to review an application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of Hillcorp Investment and Development Inc. for lands known municipally as 223 Bayfield Street. Second public meeting is for an application for zoning bylaw amendment that was submitted by Weston Consulting on behalf of the Black Creek Group. That's for 17 Sophia Street East, 357 and 11 MacDonald, and 58 and 60 Clapperton Street. Third public meeting will be to review applications for official plan and zoning bylaw amendments and a draft plan of subdivision submitted by Smart Centers on behalf of Barrie Developments Limited for lands known municipally as 15 Harvie Road. Members of Planning Committee will be listening to the presentations and the comments received during the public meetings, but we will not be making our own comments or debating these items tonight. That happens when the staff report is presented to council or committee at a later date. We will have an opportunity for the ward councillors for each of these developments to ask questions of staff and questions of clarification on behalf of residents who are unable to attend the meetings. Other committee members, including myself, of course, can ask our questions of staff after the meeting. Questions raised tonight by the public and by the ward councillors will be noted by staff and the applicants. However, they won't be responded to during the public meetings. Purpose of public meeting is not to do question and answer. Those questions, though, will be addressed in the staff reports that are presented to committee at a later date. If you wish notification of the staff reports, please sign the notification form that's at the back of the chambers. That will ensure that you are contacted when the staff report is coming forward, so you can be here when council considers the matter again. You can also email cityclerks@barrie.ca if you want to be added to the notification list for these applications. Ms. Banfield, Director of Development Services, could you confirm that the notifications for these meetings were conducted in accordance with the Planning Act?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, they were.
Thank you very much. So we will proceed with the first public meeting. That's 219-223 Bayfield, and I will call on a representative of Innovative Planning Solutions to provide the presentation concerning this application for zoning bylaw amendment. All right, good evening. Welcome to Planning Committee, and the floor is yours for the presentation. There we go.
Good evening, Mayor Lehman, members of committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Megan Asbill. I'm a junior planner with Innovative Planning Solutions, representing our client Hillcorp Investment and Development Inc. on their application for a zoning bylaw amendment for lands known as 219 and 233 Bayfield Street. My colleague Kyle Galvin is also on the line and able to answer any questions that may come up. And I have a brief presentation which provides an overview of the proposed application under consideration. The subject lands are outlined in red on this slide, located at the southeast intersection of Bayfield Street and Grove Street in the city center planning area. These subject lands have an area of 962 square meters with frontage on Bayfield Street and Grove Street, where public transit is available and accessible. Bayfield Street is identified as an arterial road with future 2.6 meter road widening, resulting in a developable area of 946 square meters. 233 Bayfield Street is vacant, and 219 Bayfield contains an existing two-story single detached dwelling, which is proposed to be maintained and converted for commercial use. The land slope from north to south and contain vegetation throughout, but generally towards the east property line. The subject lands are designated city center in the city's official plan. 233 Bayfield is currently zoned Transition Center Commercial SB 57, while 219 Bayfield is zoned Residential Multiple Dwelling Second Density in the city's zoning bylaw. The image shows the proposed zoning amendment. The proposal seeks to rezone the entire land holdings to the Transition Center Commercial with Special Provision Zone in order to permit the conversion of the existing dwelling to commercial use in the form of a real estate office. The special provision proposed is for a reduced minimum landscape buffer adjacent to a residential zone of 2.8 meters where 3 meters is required. This slide shows the conceptual site plan of the property. No changes are proposed to the existing structure, and enhanced landscaping and additional parking have been added with the proposed change in use. Vehicle access is provided from Grove Street as far from Bayfield as possible, with a total of 7 parking spaces provided, including 1 barrier-free space as required. As a result of the required parking and access location, the landscape buffer along the east property is reduced to a minimum of 2.8 meters where 3 meters is required. The reduced landscape buffer is a result of our intention to maximize the distance of the entrance from Bayfield Street. A neighborhood meeting was held on May 4th, 2021, with 9 members of the public in attendance. At the time of the neighborhood meeting, parking was proposed to the rear of the building, and parking has since been moved to the side and along Grove Street as a result of engineering considerations to provide for adequate stormwater management. During the neighborhood meeting, major items identified were related to traffic and the intended use. A traffic impact study has since been submitted and is with the city for review, and it addresses any traffic concerns. And as mentioned, the intended use is for a real estate office. Additional reports and studies were also submitted in support of this application, which include the traffic impact study, a tree preservation plan, a functional servicing report, and a planning justification report. This slide shows a proposed landscape plan. Additional tree plantings and vegetation have been added to the site to enhance the existing landscape elements and to contribute to the buffer between adjacent residential uses. And the plan also provides a conceptual snow storage area and accommodates the required daylighting triangle at Bayfield and Grove Street. In conclusion, the proposal will facilitate the adaptive reuse of the existing dwelling to a commercial use in the form of a real estate office. The proposed rezoning to Transition Center Commercial reflects a city center designation in the neighboring Transition Center Commercial zones. The proposed application aligns and conforms with the provincial policies on land use patterns and further conforms with the policies of the City of Barrie official plan. And it is our opinion that the proposed application represents good planning and is in the public interest. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions and hear any comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I'll now call in Shelby White, our senior planner, to provide an update on the status of this application. Ms. White.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Good evening, Mayor Lehman, members of Planning Committee. Further to Megan Asbell's presentation, I'll make note that planning staff are currently completing the technical review process for this rezoning application. In addition to the memo I provided to Planning Committee, I will provide a brief update of the status of the application, comments received, and the primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff at this time. This application seeks to facilitate a change in use of the existing building from a single detached dwelling to a commercial real estate office. As Ms. Asbell noted, there are no changes or additions being proposed to the building at this time, but there is a new driveway and parking area being proposed to the north of the building adjacent to Grove Street. The applicant is seeking one site-specific zoning provision, being a slight reduction in the required landscape buffer area between the new parking area and the adjacent residential property at 13 Grove Street East. The applicant has proposed 2.8 meters, whereas the standard is 3 meters. As Ms. Asbell noted, a virtual public meeting was held on May 4th, 2021. 9 members of the public attended, along with the Ward 2 councillor, planning staff, and the applicant's planner. She already gave you a bit of an overview, but questions posed were related to clarifying the planned use for the lands and possible traffic impacts. And the applicant has provided a summary of these questions and responses in their planning justification report, as well as a traffic brief. And all of this is available for download from the city's proposed development website. As I mentioned, this application is currently under review by planning staff, the city's technical review departments, and external agencies. At this time, the primary planning and land use matters being considered include compliance with provincial policy and the city's official plan, compatibility and integration with surrounding land uses, review of the proposed parking lot location and reduced landscape buffer area, review of the tree inventory analysis and preservation plan, impacts on traffic, including the proposed driveway configuration and new access on Grove Street East, and confirmation that the proposed change in land use from residential to commercial can be supported by existing or planned infrastructure. I will also note that despite the two addresses, the subject site is one consolidated parcel, and our addressing staff have confirmed that they will be retiring the 219 Bayfield address, so the entire parcel can be referred to by 223 Bayfield. All comments received during the technical review process, as well as comments provided at this public meeting, will be included and addressed in the staff report. And right now we're targeting the third or fourth quarter of 2022 to bring that back for planning committee's consideration. Should council approve the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, the applicant will be required to submit a subsequent site plan application for approval. And during that stage, more detailed design matters will be reviewed, including things such as fencing, lighting, and landscaping. So once again, just in conclusion, all submitted materials and key dates associated with the application are available online on the city's proposed development webpage under Ward 2. Alternatively, you can also contact me, Shelby White, or the primary file manager, Madeline Kowalchuk, directly. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ms. White, for the update on the status of the application. This is now the opportunity for anyone who's present to give us comments or online. And I'll just remind those who are online, if you do want to speak at this public meeting, you can email cityclerks@barrie.ca or you can call 797-5353. Staff will send you the information to participate. So I'll ask first, is there anyone in the chambers who wishes to comment on this application? Come on down, sir. Mr. Aspen,
Good evening,
welcome
Your
back
Worship.
to a chamber you're familiar with.
I try not to come here too much. Might get the urge to come back.
Nice to see you, Mr. Mayor. Floor is yours.
Thanks. I'm going to surprise everybody when I start to speak because I'm not against this project. Matter of fact, when Hill Investments purchased the property from the city, their solicitor, a different Mr. Hill, set up an appointment with me on the site to discuss their proposal. Their plan was to maintain an entrance off Bayfield Street and then have an exit on the Grove Street East, close to my driveway. That's why they bought the property. I believe then it was a great idea for traffic flow and still do. Over the last year, I've seen some copies, several copies of different designs that have changed from the concept, which include closing off Bayfield Street driveway and making a double driveway on Grove Street. So if I might ask a question to one of the professionals present here, is a property owner not entitled to have a driveway onto the street that it faces? I believe so. So I'm referring to 219 Bayfield Street. 223 Grove Street, for example, always had a driveway on Grove Street. And I know that very well because at 13 Grove where I reside, I grew up there. So I won't give you my age, but I have resided there in total over 44 years. And I think it'd be hard pressed to find somebody that knows that corner without having the consultant's degrees and everything else other than me. I got a pretty good idea of that corner. My question to IPS, did IPS change the original concept? Was it the city or the applicant? And I understand it was not the applicant because that's why they bought the property. Can someone advise who required the change to close off Bayfield Street.
Dave, I hate to tell you, we stopped doing Q&A in the meetings, but we'll get your questions answered for you.
All right. To have an entrance, and I called IPS planning yesterday because a lot of the diagrams don't show the actual distance from the west side of the proposed driveway onto Grove Street to the daylight triangle, which the city maintained when they sold the property. And I was advised when he called me back, the gentleman's not here, but it's online, advised me it's approximately 44 feet from the distance. If everyone hasn't been up there to take a view, as I say, I've mentioned there, reside there for a long time. An entrance and an exit at that location onto Grove Street is a recipe for disaster. Grove Street East, traveling westbound to stop at Bayfield Street. It's 2 lanes westbound and 1 lane eastbound. Traffic to either turn in from Grove Street onto into that driveway is going to back up traffic. And anytime during the day now, traffic is backed up quite often, at least to Clapperton Street traveling eastbound. And then you've got the school buses in the morning and in the afternoon, and it's hard even to get out of my driveway. And you'll notice anyone in my block backs in because you can't drive it, you can't back out onto Grove Street. You'll be sitting there all day. Along also that little stretch of road, the curb area from Bayfield to the proposed driveway, sometimes the city transit bus holds to maintain an on-schedule time. 2-lane driveway coming out is going to block that opportunity for either cars getting in or holding up transit. The parking lot, as I see now, has been designed, does not allow for snow clearing. Now, we all know Barrie gets lots of snow. The plow comes up Bayfield Street and turns onto Grove Street at least 3 times within 35 minutes because you have 2 lanes northbound and you also have a northbound turning lane onto Grove Street West. My snowblower won't do it. I have a 26 horsepower tractor with a blower and it won't do it. I've had to buy a plow for the rear of my truck to get it. And when that snow piles up, they're not going to have that parking space there. And the applicant has not asked me to bring this forward. I've never met the owner of Peggy Hill Real Estate. Advanced green for southbound Bayfield Street along with westbound turning lanes. It will be absolute terrible to try and get into that driveway if that is going to be the only entrance. And I'm going to give you an example of a couple of similar driveways that were done in the last few years on Bayfield Street. That's become a disaster if you're traveling north. The combined driveway at the Flush Dining, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Cars will be stopped northbound right down to the 400 off ramp, as well as Starbucks on Bayfield Street southbound, the way that the driveways were forced to be developed. Traffic southbound on Bayfield Street will be stopped past the north entrance of Walmart. The original concept that the owners had for that property to go in off Bayfield Street, to go out onto Grove Street, would be a perfect solution. I'm not worried about any environmental or water runoff. It's been fine for years. And the people beside me years ago had a driveway. The best example I can get, besides Remax Che at Bayfield and Wellington, is right outside the back door when you leave here tonight. 70 Collier Street, the rear parking lot. You come in off Mulcaster Street and you leave off Worsley Street. Works fine. It's unfortunate that the owners have purchased this property and then now this may be imposed on them. It is going to destroy any opportunity of that property in the future if they happen to do something else with that property. And it's not fair. I have a solution is if they can't get what they want, the city maybe should buy the property back from them. That would be a great PR movement. My last comment I'll make is an invitation. If you don't understand may not believe, or you think my comments in regards to traffic have been blown out of proportion, I invite you to contact me. I'll set up the lawn chairs and I'll provide the ice water. And you'll see firsthand what you will not, that you don't want to create. But other than that, the owners have done a beautiful job on reestablishing that home to an office. They've done a lot of work on it. It's a lot of money. And compared to what was there before, it's great. But instead of having a nice green welcoming lawn coming into the city, you're going to cover it up with cars parked. There's going to be a parking lot. That doesn't add to the original concept of Bayfield Street years ago. When I sat around that table, Bayfield Street was going to be an artery into the downtown, just like Avenue Road. I remember Jim Taylor used to use a comment, it'd be like Avenue Road in Toronto. Now we want to turn part of it into a parking lot. It's ruining, and you're turning away people that want to do things in Barrie. Those are my comments. And my cell number is available. I'm sure most of the staff still have it. I'd be more than welcome to entertain you for a couple of hours. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the comments and of course the invitation. Thanks, Mayor Aspin. Are there any others here tonight who wish to comment on this proposed application? Okay, Madam Clerk, have we got anybody online who's asked to speak? Okay. If there are no other comments from members of the public, I'll go to the ward councillor. Councillor Aylwin, any questions or clarification on this application? No. Okay. Then I will declare this public meeting concluded. I'll note for anybody watching and here, of course, if you have written comments after the meeting, you can submit them to Ms. White, Shelby White. That's shelby.white@barrie.ca. And with that, we will move to our second meeting. Thank you to both the presenters and to Mayor Aspin for giving us your comments. We'll go to the second public meeting. A reminder again, if you're participating virtually, you haven't yet registered and you wish to speak, you can either email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353. Staff will send you the information you need to participate online tonight. So I will now call a representative from Weston Consulting to provide the presentation concerning the application for a zoning bylaw amendment. This is 17 Sophia East, 357 and 11 MacDonald, and 58 and 60 Clapperton.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Welcome to Planning Committee, Mr. Vanny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me just get my presentation up. Can everyone see my screen? Is my screen visible?
Yep, you're all good.
Oh, perfect. So my name is Michael Vanny and I'm an associate with the Weston Consulting Group. And I'm here to speak to you this evening on behalf of the Black Creek Group for their zoning bylaw amendment application for the properties located at 17 Sophia Street, 357 and 11 MacDonald Street, and 58 and 60 Clapperton. I'm also joined by my friends this evening, Angela Baldwin, who's with Baldwin Planning and Development Consultants, and Adrian So from Paradigm Transportation Solutions, who's our transportation engineer. Also watching from home are our clients and our project manager. And on the screen here is the various team members that have helped contribute to this application that's before you this evening. So the site is located at the southwest corner of Clapperton and MacDonald Street. It does consist of 7 parcels currently. You can see them on the screen. If you can see my cursor, 17 Sophia, 3 to 11 MacDonald, and 58 and 60 Clapperton on the screen here. The 2 parcels along Clapperton do consist of existing residential lots, while 17 Sophia and 3 to 11 MacDonald are currently vacant. The site is located within the downtown area, and it's separated from the stable residential areas to the north by Lions Park and the configuration of MacDonald and Sophia intersections here. So the site is located within the urban growth center, which more commonly referred to as the downtown Barrie area. And the urban growth center mandates densities of 150 person jobs per hectare per the provincial growth plan policies. The City of Barrie official plan, one that is presently in force, designates the site as city center. This designation generally permits a range and mix of uses, mostly in a combination of medium to high density built forms, and is expected to accommodate the greatest heights and densities in the city. The official plan provides the overarching land use vision for the city, and the development proposal currently conforms to the Barrie official plan. With respect to the zoning, the city's zoning bylaw zones the site as RA2-1, residential apartment 2, and C2-1, or the transition center commercial zone. The transition center commercial zone also applies to 58 Clapperton and the southern portions of 7 and 11 MacDonald, as you can see on the graphic here. So now I guess the good stuff, the development proposal before you. So the applications propose a 21-story mixed-use building, which will consist of 253 residential units, 2,761 square meters of commercial space at the ground floor, adjacent to the Clapperton and MacDonald intersection. The building facade will be designed to include a mix of glass, stone, and masonry materials. The masonry is predominantly proposed for the 4-story podium, and that's to distinguish it from the tower above. The range of unit sizes and types are also proposed within the building to diversify the housing opportunities in the area and increase the overall housing supply for a range of family types. The building includes a mix of bachelors, one beds plus dens, two beds plus dens, and 3-bedroom units. So a wide range of units that generally fall within a 650 to 700 square foot range overall on an average basis. The development also includes a parking supply of 216 spaces, which is currently at a ratio of 0.85 spaces per unit. And that's proposed to be located within 3 levels of underground parking, as well as some vehicle parking at grade that is screened along the western portion of the site. In addition to the parking, there's also a wide range of transportation options that's been proposed and is discussed within the submitted materials regarding opportunities for car share, and a variety of transportation options for street parking and bicycle parking. Currently, the supply is 250 bicycle parking spaces, so 1 space per unit. As you can see on the screen, the rendering is just a conceptual rendering of the building. Detailed design of the materiality will be worked out through the site plan approval stage should the application proceed. But this is to give you a general idea as to the building massing. And the development proposal before you this evening is generally in line with what was presented at the community open house on April 6, 2022. In addition to that, there's also 12 square meters per unit of amenity space, which comes out to a little over 3,800 square meters overall of amenity space within the entire site, and an overall floor space index of 6.02. So on the screen before you is the site plan, but more specifically it is the ground floor portion of the site plan, just to give you a little bit more of an idea as to how the building will function. The access to the site has been proposed to be off of Clapperton Street based on direction from city staff and through various discussions that happened prior to the application being submitted. This access is to provide more safety along Sophia and MacDonald, and as well provides better traffic flow within the downtown area. The access off of Clapperton leads internal to the site, where there are some barrier-free and visitor parking spaces at grade, as well as an underground parking ramp that leads to 3 levels of underground parking. There's also a loading space at the rear of the building. On the site, there are 2 main entrances to the building, one being off of Sophia and MacDonald to increase the streetscape presence of the building and animate that streetscape and public realm. There's also another access at the rear for more of a functionality purpose for those that are parking or visiting the site, as well as for drop-offs. The building does include various amenities at grade, as well as commercial space that is proposed along the MacDonald and Clapperton frontages, as well as a 170 square meter, approximately 170 square meter outdoor amenity and urban square that is proposed at the corner of Clapperton and MacDonald. So on the screen right now are a few conceptual renderings of the public square and open space that's proposed at the corner. So through the design process and in consultation with city staff, we saw the potential of a great community benefit here and a bit of a gateway feature into the downtown area. So as part of the development application, we are proposing, as I said, the 170 square meters of urban square that will be open to the public but privately owned. We are excited about this feature and see it as a gathering place, not only for the community, but for the future residents of the building. The rendering shown are preliminary, but we envision the space to include various street amenities such as bike parking, benches, tables, as well as extensive landscape treatments. The primary entrance to the commercial space is also located off of the urban square, which we believe will assist in animating and activating the space, as well as providing a great opportunity for that commercial viability of that unit. Now on the screen is a bit more of articulation around other aspects of the building and some of the landscape and streetscape improvements that the plan hopes to bring. In addition to the public square, the team has put a lot of thought into the overall streetscape plan and the vision for the public realm. So generous plantings and landscape elements are proposed to animate the streetscape and improve the pedestrian experience along Clapperton, as well as on MacDonald and Sophia. As I said previously, the main building entry is also located off of Sophia and MacDonald to further animate that streetscape. So the application before you this evening seeks to amend the existing transition center commercial zoning and apply to the entirety of the lands with site-specific provisions. This is to implement the development application as currently proposed. There are a number of site-specific provisions that will need to be implemented through that process, such as reductions in the side yard setback, increases to the building height and gross density, slight reduction in the parking requirement, and as well as a reduction in the overall commercial ratio in a ratio to the ultimate GFA. We are still awaiting feedback from zoning staff and will continue to refine this list of amendments as we proceed through the application process. So in terms of next steps, we have already had, as I said, a public open house prior to the submission of our application, where we did receive a lot of positive feedback from the community, which we are still considering in our refinements to this plan. We wish to hear some additional feedback this evening from council, as well as from any members of the public that are in attendance this evening, to take that back and consider further refinements to our plan. As I also said, we are still awaiting a number of comments from city departments and external agencies. We'll be reviewing any comments we received tonight against those comments to potentially make further refinements to the plan and address all issues so that the application can be brought forward to this committee for further consideration in the future. Okay, so that concludes my presentation. I'm here this evening to answer any questions of committee, as well as I said, my friends Angela Baldwin and Adrian So are also here to provide some feedback if there's any specific questions from the public or from this committee. Thank you for providing us this opportunity to present to you this evening, and we look forward to your feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the presentation, Mr. Vanny. I'll call on Andrew Gamero, Senior Planner, to give us an update on the status of the application. Mr. Gamero, floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee. Further to Mr. Vanny's presentation, please be advised that planning staff are currently completing the technical review process associated with this application. And in addition to the memo provided to Planning Committee, I will be providing a brief update on the status of the application, comments received from members of the public, and highlighting the primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff and our technical review team at this time. As Mr. Vanny mentioned, a virtual neighborhood meeting was held on April 6th of this year regarding the proposed application, and approximately 45 members of the public, the applicant, ward councillor, and planning staff were in attendance. The following matters were raised by residents at the meeting. Firstly, residents expressed concerns with the proposed building height and felt that the built form may be incompatible with the surrounding area. Residents identified that the existing three-way intersection of Sophia, MacDonald, and Clapperton streets is problematic from a traffic operations perspective, and we're concerned that the conditions would just be worse if this site were to be developed. Residents also expressed concerns with the demolition of the existing single detached buildings at 58 and 60 Clapperton Street, citing that they may have some historical significance. Residents also wanted assurances that the proposed development would include sufficient parking. Some residents also expressed concerns regarding the provision of ground floor commercial uses at the site. They felt that maybe there was an oversaturation of commercial uses in the UGC, or the Urban Growth Center. Residents also wanted assurances that the proposed development would not result in unreasonable shadowing over neighboring properties, city streets, and public open spaces. And they also expressed some concerns regarding a loss of privacy just due to the height of the building. And finally, residents also expressed a desire to see the applicant provide affordable units within the development. So as I noted previously, the application is currently under review by planning staff and the city's technical review team and external agencies, including the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. And an analysis of this application will be provided at a later date following the technical review and public engagement process, and when a staff report is brought forward for planning committee's consideration. The primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff at this time include, but are not limited to, one, the appropriateness of the proposed building height and compatibility and integration with surrounding land uses. The impact that the proposed development may have on traffic operations and pedestrian safety in the area, particularly as it relates to the three-way intersection that I mentioned earlier. Ensuring that the built form, site layout, and overall design contribute to creating a safe and active pedestrian-friendly streetscape. Ensuring that there's connectivity between the proposed development and other planned developments in the area, particularly from a pedestrian and vehicular circulation perspective. Confirming that the proposed development can be serviced by existing and or planned municipal services and infrastructure. Staff are also looking at tree preservation, in this case, particularly as it relates to any shared boundary trees. We're also looking to ensure that any environmental impact, such as contamination associated with any past commercial uses, is mitigated and or remediated prior to the development of the site, should this application be approved. And finally, staff want to ensure that the proposed density is appropriate for the site and won't jeopardize the functionality of the development proposal in the long term. So in terms of the next steps in the planning process, planning staff will continue the technical review of this application. There will likely be some back and forth with the applicant. They'll probably make some revisions in response to staff and public comments. So at this point, we're targeting the first or second quarter of 2023 to bring a staff report forward to Planning Committee for your consideration. And all comments received through the technical review and public engagement processes will be identified and addressed in that staff report. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee. I'm happy to answer any questions of clarification and to hear from members of the public. And I just want to note that all of the submission material and key dates associated with the application are available online on the city's proposed developments webpage under Ward 2. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the update, Mr. Gamero. I will start. I know we have one person who registered online, but I'll just start by asking if there's anyone in the chambers who wishes to speak on this planning application. Anyone who wishes to give comment on this matter? Okay, not seeing anyone. We do have one person who registered online. And we don't have her right now. Okay, are we able to reach her? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just go to the ward councillor for any questions of clarification, and then hopefully we'll be able to get to our one registered speaker. And I will just remind people before I go to you, Councillor Owen, that if you do want to speak tonight, if you're watching online, it's 797-5353 or email cityclerks@barrie.ca, and we will bring you into the Zoom portion of the meeting to be able to ask your questions and give your comments. Councillor Owen, any questions on this one?
Yes, thank you,
Yeah, go ahead.
Mayor Lehman. My first question is for Mr. Gamero, and it's picking up on the issue of that three-way intersection in that odd section of Sophia Street East that's one way. Are there any long-term plans to look at either like realigning that intersection or closing that little section of Sophia? I think there could be a wonderful opportunity to expand Lions Park there as well. Any thoughts on that or plans?
Yep, through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin. So it's certainly something staff are considering. There actually have been ongoing discussions with the applicant regarding potential options to address that issue. We're not sure whether that would be driven by the applicant, potentially through the site plan process when we get there, or perhaps we could work with the applicant. The city could team up with them to address that. But the option that we have discussed actually is closing that one-way portion of Sophia Street and expanding Lions Park. We just thought it'd be a great addition to the downtown. So certainly something we're looking into, and we'll report back in the staff report.
That's great. That's great to hear. My second question is for the applicant, Mr. Vanny. And it's around the provision of affordable housing. So as you know, in our current official plan, we have a goal of 10% affordable units in all new developments. And in our new official plan, which is yet to be ratified by the province, we have a goal of 15% affordable units in all new developments. So I guess my first question is, will you be meeting that target? And second question is, how will you be meeting that target and demonstrating that you're conforming with our official plan?
Sure, thanks for the question, Councillor Kieran. So at present, there is no, I guess, affordable housing units proposed for the development that would be falling under the definition of affordable under the official plan. However, the application is proposing a wide range of different unit types that will overall increase the housing supply and affordability in the area. We also note that the policies do speak to providing a range of affordable housing across the entire urban growth center and not just on each individual application. There is the Coral building next door, and there's also the application in Bayfield and Sophia that is an affordable housing application as well. But that being said, we do acknowledge that there has been some policy changes. There's also been some drastic changes in the housing market already with recent changes from the province, as well as the effects of financial changes with new interest rates, which is also providing an impact to the overall housing market. But we do acknowledge the comment, and we did also receive this comment from the general public at the open house. And it is something that we do want to consider and take back to our clients and look at different opportunities to potentially increase affordable housing on the site, and what other options may be to provide the city with some other community benefits as well in tandem with that.
Thank you. That's it for my questions.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Owen. Were we able to reach the one registered speaker? Okay, well, thank you for making the attempts to reach her. With that, then we will conclude the public meeting on this application. Of course, this is not the only way or time to comment. If you are watching, or for the one registered speaker, if you were unable to join us tonight but do want to comment on the application, please email your comments to Mr. Gamero, and that's andrew.gamero@barrie.ca. And the easiest way to do that's probably to access the development application on the city's website. His contact details are there, and how you can view all of the information regarding this application, and of course, submit your comments. on the application itself. So with that, we'll declare this public meeting concluded. Thank you, Mr. Gamero. Thank you, Mr. Vanny.
Thank you.
And we'll move to the third public meeting tonight. One more reminder to those watching, it is cityclerks@barrie.ca by email, or you can phone 797-5353 if you wish to register to speak at this public meeting. If you're watching online, and our staff will give you the information on how to join the meeting. So I'll now call on a representative of Smart Centers to provide the presentation concerning the application for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, as well as draft plan of subdivision 415 Harvie Road. Mr. Resnick, welcome to Planning Committee, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'll pull up my presentation. Just a few moments. Mayor Lehman, members of committee, staff, and residents, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Mark Resnick. I'm with Smart Centers, and I'm joined tonight by my colleague Daniel Branzia, who's watching, and Kaylee Robbins from our planning consultants, Weston Consulting. For those of you who attended the neighborhood consultation on January 12th, much of this presentation will be familiar. The main elements of our development proposal remain, with some modifications, and I'll run through the presentation. I'll start with a little bit about who Smart Centers is, some brief comments on the policy context, and an overview of the proposed development. Many people think of Smart Centers, they think of shopping centers, and that is correct. That remains our core business, but it's not our whole business. We're a national company with 174 properties, and we're in the midst of diversifying into other forms of development. We're building residential through our Smart Living brand, office, commercial, industrial, seniors residence in partnership with Riviera, and self-storage with our joint venture partner, Smart Stop. Bringing it into the Barrie context, on the map, you can see Smart Centers has a long presence in Barrie. We have 2 Walmart anchored shopping centers in the north and south ends of the city, a smaller shopping center on Harvie Road, and a downtown project underway with our joint venture partner, Greenwind. And tonight, we're here to talk about our property at 15 Harvie Road. On the screen is an aerial shot of the property in question tonight. It is a 33.26 hectare property that is currently vacant, but actively farmed. It continues as an interim use pending development. The site is generally bounded by Highway 400 to the east, Thrushwood and the residential community to the west, Harvie Road and the Lovers Whiskey Creek to the north, and commercial uses to the south, with Lovers Creek bisecting the south portion of the property. For a little more context panned out, you can see surrounding the property is generally industrial uses to the east, commercial to the south, and residential to the north and west. A little bit about the planning context. Under the current official plan, the property has a split designation with industrial on the west, commercial on the east, and open space and environmental protections designations around the Lovers and Whiskey Creek. Under the proposed official plan, which has been approved and endorsed by council and which is before province for approval, the property has been adjusted to residential with neighborhood designation on the west and industrial designation on the east, carrying forward the environmental protection designations. Our proposal that will be discussed tonight is aligned and implements to these new official plan designations. The zoning bylaw aligns to the current and old official plan designations, with industrial zoning for the west half and commercial zoning for the east half. And I would point out that inherent within the C4 zone are some residential permissions. Now for the project. We're here tonight to debate site-specific applications for an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, and a draft plan of subdivision. The proposed development I'll put up on the screen in a moment proposes on the west portion of the property to be a residential community with low-rise and mid-rise built forms, a community park, storm pond, and open space. The eastern portion of the property is proposed to be employment uses, storm pond, and open space. The divide of the property between the west and east is created by the future Brine Drive that has been dedicated to the city of Barrie and is now seeking permits and final approvals, with construction anticipated to commence this year and later for completion by 2024. The plan up on the screen before you is the draft plan of subdivision that has been submitted to the city with our applications. For discussion, I've put on the screen a simplified version that is probably easier to view. As you can see on the screen, the Brine Drive extension proposes through the middle of the property as a transportation spine that connects the proposed development to the balance of the city of Barrie's road network, better connecting the property to the city. Brine Drive will have multimodal opportunities for cars, bikes, and future transit routes and full municipal services. West of Brine in the proposed residential community is low to mid-rise residential forms that include semi-detached townhouses, back-to-back townhouses, and mid-rise blocks for apartments proposed between 4 and 6 stories. The residential community has been laid out with a transition of density, with the higher density forms towards the future Brine Drive right-of-way. Protections for the creeks of Lovers Creek and Whiskey Creek have been put in place with enlarged setbacks to protect for the creeks. The existing utility corridor on the west side of the property along Thrushwood Drive will remain. A new public park, storm pond, and open space have been campused all together to create an outdoor community amenity. The draft plan proposes 248 low-rise units, 2 mid-rise blocks, and is expected to be phased in construction. East of Brine is proposed for employment lands to capitalize on the highway visibility and the new enhanced access created by Brine Drive. Generally, we would expect the lands to develop with 1 to 2 story employment buildings and the open space and storm pond block. Abutting Highway 400 is a dedication to the MTO for a potential future widening of the highway. In support of these applications are a number of technical studies listed on the screen to give you a sense of the amount of work that's gone into studying this property and supporting the proposed development for the policies of the city and the Conservation Authority. These reports are currently under review by the City of Barrie, the Conservation Authority, and other commenting agencies. This is the beginning of the approvals process and the end of the presentation. The plans will be adjusted on the future based on input from the circulation comments received from the commenting agencies. The review process should ensure that the plan adheres to the policies of the City of Barrie. I'm going to just turn it back to the color-coded draft plan for a moment. At this point in the presentation, before I turn it over to staff, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and address some of the comments that have been provided by residents coming out of the neighborhood consultation in January that will be considered in consultation with city staff, and in addition to the technical comments that we expect to be forthcoming. Residents had provided a number of comments about the proposed densities and the unit mix. Questions have been raised as to why no single detached homes. And in terms of the densities, it's too much. The unit mix is something we've studied and feel meets a market demand and proposes more attainable forms of housing. The semi-detached and townhouses we feel are appropriate for the proposal and are reflective of the adjacent community that, while predominantly singles, does have on Bentley Crescent, Thrushwood Drive, and Megan Crescent existing townhouses and semi-detached forms. In our view, the proposed densities of the proposal are in keeping with the official plan and the density ranges established within it, and the permissions for up to 6-story forms of residential development closer to arterial roads like Brine Drive. The proposal will assist Barrie to achieve its intensification target set by the province, and subject to refinement of the number of apartments through future site plan applications, we have a rough estimate at this time that the overall density is in the order of 60 units per hectare, which is appropriate for a neighborhood designation. Questions had also, or comments, apologies, had also been proposed about the park and whether it would be usable and how it might be programmed. With our submission, we have provided to the city a number of concepts for how the park may be programmed, and that will be refined in consultation with staff. The final two comments that were prevalent from the community at the meeting were the layout of the roads and traffic and capacity of the schools. With respect to the capacity in the schools, the applications have been circulated to the school boards, and comments have been forthcoming, and will continue to work with the school board for accommodations, be it busing or consideration for other school locations. In terms of the roads and the traffic layout, we feel it is appropriate when conducting infill development that new development should be connected, not isolated from the surrounding community. And we've proposed for that through the road pattern in the draft plan of subdivision. With respect to Street B, which is the southerly connection to Thrushwood Drive, that was a very conscious choice to locate it there and not on Brookwood, because Brookwood leads out to Essa and would create a more direct opportunity for cut through traffic. And we felt it might be more appropriate to mitigate that by lowering the street connection down to Thrushwood. And in addition, opposite of Brookwood Drive on the property in the hydro easement is an existing hydro tower that we felt might be more appropriate to leave in place than go through the efforts and consultations for relocation if the hydro provider would support that. With that, I conclude my presentation and I'll turn it over to staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Resnick. I'll call on Celeste Katsimetry, our senior planner, to give us an update on the status of this application. Ms. Katsimetry.
Good evening, Mayor Lehman, members of Planning Committee and the public. Further to Mr. Resnick's presentation and the memorandum provided to the Planning Committee by staff, I will provide an update regarding the status of the application and the preliminary planning and land use matters being considered. As outlined in Mr. Resnick's presentation, a neighborhood meeting was held virtually on January 12th. I won't go into great detail about the meeting, as a number of questions were answered by Mr. Resnick in his presentation. So I will just identify that it was well attended with 47 attendees, including Ward 7 Councillor Gary Harvie, planning staff, and Smart Centers and members of their consulting team. Residents provided comments regarding a number of matters as noted in the presentation, primarily with regards to the proposed density, increase in traffic, the timing for the Burn Drive extension, archaeological considerations, and the capacity of local schools. The application is currently under review by planning staff and the city's technical review team, and external agencies such as Lake Simcoe Region Conservation and the Ministry of Transportation. An analysis of the application will be provided at a later date when the staff report is brought forward to Planning Committee. The primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff include the change in land use to facilitate the proposed development, integration with the existing residential land uses and proposed developments along Bryn Drive, the proposed phasing of the project and interim uses for vacant lands. And I will make special note that there have been comments received from the Simcoe County District School Board. They have been included with the circulation correspondence to members of council, and they have identified that they would like a school site on this property. So staff will be having a discussion with the applicant and facilitating those discussions with the school board in the future. The official plan amendment and amendment to the zoning bylaw are anticipated to come forward to Planning Committee in early 2023. And all of the submission materials and key dates associated with the development of the site are also available for viewing online on the city's proposed developments webpage under Ward 7. Alternatively, you can contact me directly. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions of clarification and to hear from members of the public. Thank you.
All right, thanks for the update, Ms. Katsimetry. And I will now ask if there's anyone present in the chambers who would like to come and give us comments on this application. Come on down, sir. Welcome to Planning Committee. We just need your name and address for the record of the meeting, and then go ahead and give us your comments.
Hi there. My name's Ed Greenwood. My address is number 4 Cranberry. If you put it up on the layout, it's very close to where this development would be. Apologize, I'm a little nervous. Never done this before. This is a learning experience, but we'll see how it goes. I sent an email to Celeste earlier today or yesterday with a few comments. Apologize if they're a little emotional. But in my opinion, Barrie's known for their outdoor spaces, open spaces, downtown waterfront, Ardagh Bluffs. However, this proposed development doesn't seem to match with that identity in my mind. Most of the space, more than half of it, of the proposed development is high density residential with a population density far greater than the surrounding neighborhood. That's the neighborhood that I live in. If you calculate it, if you actually do the numbers, it's significantly higher. There are no nature trails for walking or hiking or biking. The little park that is there isn't big enough for a soccer field, maybe a youth soccer field, but if you did that, you wouldn't be able to put a swing set on it. That's about 2% of the open space. 2% is the park space of the development. The only open space that is included other than the park is kind of unusable because it's stormwater ponds and stuff that's behind fences and blocked off from the residents. So if you wanted to look at the open space, you'd have to go around things and look over fences to see it. Not ideal layout in my mind. A lot of work could be done to improve it. Let's skip ahead. Proposed development, I believe, includes 768 residential units. This is when you do the math, it works out to at 2.5 people per unit. I'm not sure if that's appropriate for this like smaller units, but at 2.5 people per unit, that's about close to 2,000 people in 0.13 square kilometers, which is about I think that's correct. Yeah, works out to be a population density of 13,333 people per square kilometer, which is comparable to urban centers like downtown Toronto, downtown Vancouver are the highest population densities in Canada. The urban centers, they're 18,000 and 16,000. So this would be 13,000. So it's comparable. Greater than downtown Montreal, which is about 8,000. So when you look at how big the townhouses are and the medium rise buildings, there's a lot of people there. Very little parking in the area. If you've got a driveway in that area, it's going to be a single lane driveway for single space. That's great if one person lives there, but this is Barrie. It's not down Toronto. We don't have subways and really good transit. So most people are going to have 2 cars in most families. So that means they're going to be parking on the street. So the big one is the schools. The enrollment in Trillium Wood, I looked up this morning, is 516. This would be 768 units. That would probably double the enrollment in that school. And I can understand when, sorry, I didn't write it down your name, but she had a good point that the school board would be, wait a minute, where are we going to put these public school kids? They can't walk to school if the school's that, it already has, Trillium Wood already has 3 portable classrooms in its parking lot right now, so, or in its playground. So yeah, so I've got a few questions. I understand it's not a Q&A, but I guess they could be answered later. Can we request a seniors home and a seniors medical facility here? I think this would be well, in my opinion, it would be a very responsible development strategy as it would increase city population and also increase jobs, draw people from GTA that are trying to retire affordably. My parents are getting older and I've got to find somewhere for them to live pretty soon, and it'd be great to have them next door. My concern with a high density housing development project next door would be, especially in this area. If you look at the area, it wasn't designed to be a high density population area. There's not a lot of services in that area. I can understand you put the street there, they can get out of the area, but schools, for example, pretty limited. So I'm afraid, like, if you looked into the future in 20 years from now, what could you've done better to this area? I would say, you know, don't put a high population density area in that specific spot. I think if you want to do that, you should plan ahead and put the services around it. So if this needs to be a residential development, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but if it needs to, for number one, get the school board's plan before you approve anything. If it need, and number two, at least try to stick with the population density of the area. Number three, can we ask, this is a cute one, can we ask for a plan that matches Barrie's 2018 to 2022 strategic plan for neighborhoods? On the way into the building, I saw a picture of it, or I saw a poster and I took a picture of it. The third item, first bullet is point is create great public space. So I don't think the little park is a great public space. If you're going to do a residential, put a nice park in the center where all the residents can see it and use it, and that would create more of a community in my mind. But thank you.
All right, thanks very much for all those comments. We appreciate that. They're all being noted, of course, and we will try and respond to some those issues in the staff report. Thanks for all those detailed comments, sir. Are there others here tonight who wish to come down and make a comment? Come on down. All right, welcome to Planning Committee. And again, we just need your name and address for the record, and then
Thank you.
give
Hi,
us your
everyone.
comments.
My name is Sarah, and I'm at 40 Megan Crescent, which is one of the townhouse streets that Mr. Reisnick previously discussed. I'm actually here just to sort of mirror, was it Ed's comments? We've never met, but I actually totally agree. A few of our neighbors have been talking, especially in the townhouse area, about the density and how it's not very practical with the very narrow streets. There's not enough parking, as everybody knows. Just late last week, I was on Thrushwood, which is also the townhouse street, and there was a few emergency vehicles that had been called. There was a 911 call, and they actually had to park, I think, 7 doors down just to be able to get the stretcher to the house where they were going, because there's not enough parking on the street. People park on both sides. There's hardly any space to get through. So I do think we need better planning, like lower density and maybe wider roads. Like the roads that Mr. Reisnick had showed, they're kind of narrow for all of those townhouses. And if you stick to the density that we already have in the neighborhood, it will really help alleviate some of the parking concerns on the street. I also agree with the green space comment that Ed had. Right now, even though we don't have a lot of green spaces there, just having sort of the open field actually helps. Like there are people who walk their dogs in the field. And by putting more houses in that empty space, you're basically taking away the little bit of green space we have and making it busier. So I would request that maybe Smart Centers thinks of putting a park on the northern side of the development, in addition to lowering the density. So whatever spaces we do have are actually usable and not, not always busy. So those are just the 2 comments that I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for those comments. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else in the chambers who wishes to speak on this one? Okay, I do think we have some registered speakers online. Okay, so we've only been able to reach, we don't have the other 2. They're not here for the meeting and we haven't been able to reach them. So we will proceed with the one that we do have, and that is Lori Ford. Ms. Ford, welcome to Planning Committee. And we'll just bring you into the call here. Hi, we can hear you. Go ahead and give us your comments.
Well, this is her husband, Greg.
All right. Welcome to you too, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. We had 3 concerns that we expressed following the first meeting, which we attended by Zoom. The first one is density. And while I note that the proponent this evening stated that there were semi and townhouses along Bentley and Thrushwood, it should also be noted that on those streets, there are also single family homes. If you look at the current Maple Woods neighborhood that we live in, which I would define as being south of Harvie, east of Veterans, and north of Thrushwood, there are 407 housing units. Most of them, yes, are single-family homes. And that includes the 20 executive townhouses at the end of Megan. This proposal, when it was originally given, when you include the apartment buildings, it will reach 768 housing units. I don't know how you can consider that to not be excessive compared to what we currently live in. I understand that there is no way that you will build just single family homes and meet the requirements for affordable housing, but I think there has to be a reasonable balance. The second issue that we had was very similar to the first, was the style and the design of the homes proposed really are not in keeping with the character of the existing neighborhood. Again, I understand that we need more housing and that semis and townhouses are an appropriate way, but to only have semi and townhouses, to me, is a little out of character when you have basically the majority of our current housing is all single family. And thirdly, and frankly, the most important, is the issue of traffic. And I recognize that the proposal has moved the one access down to Thrushwood, but I've lived in this neighborhood now for 6 years, and it is unbelievable how much the traffic has changed. We are suffering the ill effects every day of the expansion of Harvie Road, not only the noise, but the congestion. The congestion on Elmbrook Drive, where the school is, you can't even traverse that road in the mornings and the afternoons. The traffic is sometimes backed up from Harvie all the way down Thrushwood, of parents picking up and or delivering their children to the school. So to have another couple of hundred housing residents coming into this community and that traffic being dumped into the existing neighborhood, frankly, I just don't see how it's tolerable. But those are our concerns at this point. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ford. We do need your address for the record of the meeting.
18 Megan Crescent.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much. And thanks for giving us those comments tonight, being here online. Do we have anyone else online? Okay. And we haven't been able to reach the two that indicated previously. Okay. So with that, I'll go to the ward councillor. Councillor Harvie, any questions of clarification? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. First few questions be for the applicant. We've heard a few different unit counts mentioned. Can you confirm what your actual unit count is? I can see online it still shows 248 semi and towns. However, there's no actual unit count when it comes to the mid-rise blocks that you're also proposing.
Happy to respond. You are correct. Online, it shows 248 units because under a draft plan of subdivision, those are lots and actual units. In my presentation, I was specific to reference the mid-rise blocks without a specific unit count because that won't be confirmed until a future site plan application. In the early days of the proposal, both in 2019 when the conversion request was submitted as part of the official plan process and in the neighborhood meeting, our intent was simply to provide consideration for how many total units and apartments might be achieved. But as the project ebbs and flows and adjusts and the shape of those blocks adjust, that will then leave us with a block of land that informs future site plan application. So a long way of saying, we just wanted to give an indication of how many apartments might happen, but that won't be confirmed until a future time. All that I can confirm for certain today is the 248 units that are low rise as lots in the subdivision.
Okay, great, thanks. And obviously the latest memo from the school board could impact some of that unit count moving forward, as I didn't realize that Trillium Woods was already at capacity. And actually, I guess if there's a few portables, it means they're probably a little bit above capacity. The other question, I just want to point of clarification. Street A, can you please confirm what road Street A aligns with? As the map in the presentation tonight doesn't actually show any of the current streets. As I understand B, by looking at the curve, it appears that it aligns with the curve in Thrushwood.
That's correct. And Street A would align closest to Cranberry Lane. And if I may also add, I agree with your comment that if the negotiations and discussions and evolutions of the plan do lead to a school site, it's potential that it would further reduce the unit count. As the initial request of the school board, or suggestion, I should say, was to locate it along Brine Drive, where one of the mid-rise blocks is. But again, that would be decided through the comment and review process.
Okay, great. And then when it comes to Street G, I know that looks like it would align directly with Brookwood. And I do appreciate you reaching out to me. I think it was at least a few months ago anyway, and we had some discussions about aligning that with Brookwood. And then obviously the issue of that significantly huge hydro tower partially blocking one of the two lanes, aligning it with Brookwood. Now that is a major road leading directly out to Veterans, which could alleviate some of the traffic concerns. Have you explored the feasibility and the possibility of being able to move that tower 30, 40, 50 feet so that way that road could align? Or is there a way to maneuver around that tower and have the road meet it on some type of an angle or something? Just so that way we're not pushing traffic out onto Thrushwood, because I have had a significant amount of people reaching out to me with concerns about traffic on Thrushwood. And actually one of the residents highlighted the fact that it's not a very wide road. And I know myself, when I've been there to see some residents, there has been some traffic related issues, and I couldn't fathom that a fire truck or an ambulance would be able to maneuver through the road very easily, just due to the sheer volume of cars on both sides of the roads.
So we haven't specifically explored that yet. We were waiting to consider the comments from tonight, the circulation comments. As you could appreciate, we have a lot of input from tonight, and in addition to the technical comments, and we wanted to comprehensively review that with staff to have a fulsome appreciation of how the plan might change. But we fully intend to engage with staff and have those discussions, and happy to report back.
And just, I guess, one more question, and that's in relation to the length of your potentially proposed driveways, because parking seems to always be an issue in every subdivision. I know ideally in a perfect world, we count the garage as a parking spot, but the reality of it is everybody uses that as a storage unit. So how many parking spots do you anticipate the driveways to be able to accommodate to potentially assist in some of the parking issues that have been brought forward this evening?
We can definitely take a look at that in more detail. If you've had a chance to study the plan, you'll note that there is a range of lot depths in the plan, and some of the deeper lots might be able to have longer driveways to accommodate more than one car, even if it is only a single lane driveway. But for the shallower depth units, our anticipation would be 2 parking spots, 1 on the driveway, 1 in the garage, provided, as you say, they haven't filled it up with other stuff.
Okay, actually, I guess my next question would be to staff, because it is directly related to traffic and the connecting roads. Is it feasible, or anything has been considered, instead of having Street A and B connect to the existing neighborhood directly, however, having a walkway that would connect to the existing neighborhood, so that way it would push all this new traffic out onto Brine Drive and alleviating any of the concerns of the residents that have lived in this area for about 15 years now?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harvie. I can certainly take that comment back and have discussions with our transportation planning staff. They are currently reviewing the traffic impact study that has been submitted in support of this project. The terms of reference for that were developed in concert with planning and transportation planning staff. So a number of different options were explored. I will certainly get back to you with a response in that.
Great, thanks. And actually, just to follow up to one of the questions that I had for the presenter, has staff explored with Electra the feasibility of possibly moving that large hydro tower a short distance to allow, if we do have to have connectability, that connectability go on to Brookwood, so that way the traffic is going straight out onto Veterans?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harvie. That was not something that staff has explored at this point in time. I can certainly make note and have that further discussion as we get all of our technical comments in particular from our transportation planning team, as I know.
Okay, and just one last question, and it comes from the construction piece. This may be a question that I'm asking far too early, but obviously this is a significant development. It's almost 34 hectares. When it comes to the construction phases of this, am I safe in assuming that we will not have any construction vehicles driving through the existing neighborhood and that the accessibility to this new development would be solely from Bryan Drive that is in the process of being built right now?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harvie. As part of our standard process, we do require a construction management plan that does need to go over the appropriate routes for construction vehicles and parking. So that will certainly be part of our review at that stage in the process.
Okay, and this might be a question for Bala, but when it comes to the timing of Bryan Drive, I know we're in the beginning phases of it now. It's anticipated to be done around 2024. How would that time with the construction of what's being proposed, and would it be, do you anticipate that it is going to be feasible to keep that construction machinery onto Bryan Drive? Because I just have a big concern if we're going to start seeing dump trucks and everything else come through the existing neighborhood, because we have an elementary school and there's been a lot of concerns through my time with young kids walking to school. And that's why we've already got one four-way stop, and I anticipate another one to be coming shortly.
Yep. Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harvie. As we get close to tendering the Bryn Drive project, we will develop construction staging plans and traffic management plans, and make sure that those requirements are part of the tender documents, such that we'll be able to control the way the construction operations are carried out. So that will be part of the requirements within the construction documents.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions, Mayor Lehman.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Harvie. If anyone watching tonight has further comments, again, a reminder that you can send them to Celeste Kitcemetery, our Senior Planner in the Development Services Department, at her email, celeste.kitcemetery@barrie.ca, and all the details on this application are online under the proposed developments section of the city's website. With that, I will declare the public meeting concluded. Thank you, Mr. Resnick. Thank you, Ms. Kitcemetery, and thank you to the residents who came tonight to give us their comments and online. Members of Planning Committee, we have no other items on the agenda except for inquiries of staff. Any inquiries from members of Planning Committee? Okay, seeing none, that concludes Planning Committee. Finance and Corporate Services Committee will be meeting Monday, June 20th at 6:15. So before council next Monday, there will be a brief Finance and Corporate Services Committee meeting. That's 6:15 on Monday. City Council is next at 7 p.m.